cargo ship Red Phoenix shook violently as another energy blast hit its hull. Captain Lee Minho gripped the control stick tighter and pushed the engines to their limit. Behind him, the 3 Vorthan interceptor ships were getting closer. "Come on, old girl," Minho whispered to his ship. "Just a little more." The Red Phoenix was not built for speed. It was a cargo hauler, designed to carry supplies between the outer colonies. But Minho had made some changes over the years. Hidden weapons, stronger shields, and engines that could push harder than they should. Today, all those modifications were being tested. His friend, Park Jiho, sat in the co-pilot seat, watching the enemy ships on the scanner. "They're gaining on us," Jiho said calmly. 2 minutes until they're in firing range. Minho nodded. He had expected this. Supply run to Colony 7 had been risky from the start. The Vorthan Empire controlled this part of space now. They did not like humans moving freely through their territory, but the colonists needed medicine and food. Someone had to help them. Then Minho pointed to a cluster of asteroids ahead. "We can lose them in there." The asteroids were large chunks of rock floating in space. Some were as big as buildings. Others were small as cars. A good pilot could hide among them. A bad pilot would crash and die. Minho was a very good pilot. He flew the Red Phoenix into the asteroid field. The Vorthan ships followed, but they were more careful. Vorthans were proud warriors, but they were also smart. They knew the dangers of flying too fast among the rocks. For 10 minutes, Minho played a deadly game of hide-and-seek. He would appear from behind one asteroid, fire his weapons, then disappear behind another. The Vorthans tried to surround him, but the asteroid field was too big and too dangerous. "I think we lost them," Jiho said, looking at his scanner. Minho was about to agree when alarms started ringing. A new ship had appeared on their scanner. This one was much bigger than the interceptors. It was a Vorthan warship. "Oh no," Minho said softly. The warship was called Void Piercer. It was 3 times longer than the Red Phoenix and had enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Worse, it had tractor beams that could grab a ship and hold it tight. "Red Phoenix, this is Commander Kira of the Void Piercer." A voice spoke over the radio. The voice was female, but cold and commanding. "You are surrounded. Power down your engines and surrender." Minho looked at Jiho. His friend shrugged. "Your choice, Captain." Minho thought about fighting. The Red Phoenix had some surprises that might help, but the warship was too strong, and there were still 3 interceptors out there somewhere. Fighting would only get them killed. "This is Captain Lee Minho," he said into the radio. "We surrender." "Smart choice, human," Commander Kira replied. "Prepare to be boarded." The tractor beam grabbed the Red Phoenix like a giant invisible hand. Slowly, the cargo ship was pulled toward the warship. Minho watched through the window as they got closer to the enemy vessel. The Void Piercer was beautiful in a deadly way. Its hull was dark blue with silver markings. Weapon ports lined its sides like eyes. "Ever been on a Vorthan ship before?" Jiho asked. "No," Minho replied. "You once, long time ago." Jiho was quiet for a moment. "They're not like us. Stronger, faster, better technology, but they think they know everything." The Red Phoenix was pulled into the warship's docking bay. Through the windows, they could see Vorthan soldiers waiting for them. The soldiers were tall and lean, with pale blue skin and sharp features. They wore black armor and carried energy weapons. "Remember," Minho said quietly. "Let me do the talking." The airlock opened with a hiss. Commander Kira walked in first. She was taller than most Vorthans, with silver markings on her face that showed her rank. Her eyes were bright yellow, like a cat's eyes. She looked at Minho and Jiho with curiosity. "So," she said, "these are the humans who led my ships on such an interesting chase." Behind her came 6 soldiers. They pointed their weapons at the 2 humans but did not fire. Minho raised his hands slowly. Jiho did the same. "Captain Lee Minho," Kira said, reading from a small device. "Former Earth Defense Force, dishonorably discharged 5 years ago. Now working as a smuggler." She looked up at him. "Impressive flying today." "Thank you," Minho said. "I do my best." Kira walked around him slowly, like a predator studying prey. Most humans panic when they see our ships. They either run in terror or fight stupidly. But you were calm, strategic. You used the asteroids well. "I had good teachers," Minho replied. "Indeed." Kira stopped in front of him. "I am curious about human tactics. We have heard stories from our forces on Kepler 440b, how a small group of human rebels somehow defeated a much larger Vorthan garrison." Minho tried to keep his face blank, but he knew about Kepler 440b. The human uprising there had been brilliant. A few dozen fighters had outmaneuvered 300 Vorthan soldiers, using nothing but clever thinking and determination. "I wouldn't know about that," Minho said. "Of course not." Kira smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. "Take them to the holding cells. I want to speak with Captain Minho later." The soldiers moved forward. One of them, a female, with darker blue skin, gestured with her weapon. "Move," she said in accented English. Minho and Jiho were led through the corridors of the warship. The halls were wide and high, designed for beings taller than humans. The walls were smooth metal with glowing lines that provided light. Everything was clean and efficient. Other Vorthians watched them as they passed. Some looked curious, others looked dismissive as if the humans were barely worth noticing. Minho could feel their eyes following him. The holding cells were at the bottom of the ship. Each cell was small but clean, with a simple bed and basic facilities. Minho and Jiho were put in cells next to each other. The energy barriers that served as doors hummed softly, while Jiho said once the guards were gone, "This is interesting." "That's one word for it," Minho replied. He sat on the bed and looked around the cell. The walls were smooth metal with no obvious weaknesses. The energy barrier was strong enough to stop a tank. "What do you think they want?" Jiho asked. "Information," Minho said. "About human tactics, human weaknesses, human strengths." He was quiet for a moment. "That commander, Kira, she's not like the others. She's thinking, is that good or bad?" Minho smiled for the first time since their capture. "That depends on how much she really wants to learn." Through the small window in his cell, Minho could see stars moving past. The void piercer was traveling somewhere, but he did not know where. He did not know what would happen to them. But he was not afraid. He had been in worse situations before, and he had learned something important during his years as a smuggler and before that as a soldier. Sometimes, the best weapon was not a gun or a ship or even superior numbers. Sometimes, the best weapon was simply being underestimated. Commander Kira stood in her private quarters, reviewing the files on her new prisoners. The room was large and decorated with weapons from her family's long military history. Curved blades, energy rifles, and battle armor lined the walls like trophies. She touched a control panel and images appeared in the air before her. Video footage from the recent battle on Kepler-4 for it to be played silently. She had watched it dozens of times, but it still confused her. 300 Vorthon soldiers, the best equipment, superior weapons and armor. They should have crushed the human rebellion in hours. Instead, 37 humans had defeated them using nothing but basic weapons and clever tricks. "How?" she whispered to herself. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Enter," she called. Commander Yoon Hana walked in. She was younger than Kira, with darker blue skin and bright green eyes. She had been asking questions about the human prisoners since they arrived. Commander Yoon said, "I have been thinking about our prisoners. What about them?" "The captain, Minho, his flying today was unusual. Most humans we encounter are either terrified or foolishly brave, but he was calm, strategic. He made our interceptors look slow." Kira nodded. She had been thinking the same thing. "Continue." Reviewed his military record. Earth Defense Force. Trained in tactical operations. But here is what interests me. Yoon touched her own control panel. New images appeared. "Look at these battle reports from his service." Kira studied the reports. Lee Minho had fought in 7 major battles against pirate fleets. In each one, he had been outnumbered. In each one, he had won using unexpected tactics. "He fights like we do," Kira said slowly, "but different, exactly. Our way is direct, honorable. We face our enemies with strength and courage, but humans... Yoon paused. "They seem to fight with their minds as much as their weapons." Kira walked to her window. Outside, stars moved past as the void piercer traveled toward their next patrol sector. She had been a warrior her entire life. Her family had served the Empire for 12 generations. She understood strength and honor and the proper way to fight. But the humans were winning battles they should lose. There had to be a reason. "Bring the captain to interrogation room 3, she ordered. "I want to speak with him." An hour later, Minho sat across from Kira in a small, bright room. His hands were bound, but he seemed relaxed, almost amused, as if this was all some kind of game. "Captain Minho," Kira began, "I have been studying your military record." "Interesting reading," Minho asked. "Very. You have won many battles against superior forces." How Minho shrugged. "Good luck, I guess." Kira leaned forward. "I do not believe in luck. I believe in skill and preparation and understanding your enemy." She touched her control panel. The Kepler-4 for 2B footage appeared between them. "Explain this to me." Minho watched the footage without expression. It showed Vorthon soldiers advancing through a city. Then explosions, confusion, soldiers running in different directions, more explosions. By the end, the proud Vorthon formation was scattered and defeated. "Looks like your soldiers had a bad day," Minho said. "Those humans were untrained civilians," Kira said, her voice growing harder. "They had no military experience, no advanced weapons, no armor, yet they defeated professional soldiers who have conquered half the galaxy. Maybe your soldiers aren't as good as you think." The insult hit Kira like a physical blow. Her yellow eyes flashed with anger. "You dare suggest that Vorthon warriors are inferior?" "I'm not suggesting anything," Minho said calmly. "I'm stating a fact. Your soldiers fight like they're still hunting giant beasts on your homeworld. All strength, no brain. It worked fine when you were the biggest thing around, but against humans..." He shook his head. "You fight like you're still in the Stone Age." Kira stood so quickly her chair fell over. Her hand moved to the weapon at her side. For a moment the room was silent, except for the hum of the ship's engines. Then, Minho smiled. "See, prove my point. Someone says something you don't like, you reach for a weapon. No thinking, no strategy, just force. How dare you? Kira's voice was loud now. Vorthan warriors have been perfecting combat for thousands of years, while your species was still throwing rocks at each other. Maybe, Minho said, but we got pretty good at throwing those rocks. Yoon, who had been watching silently from the corner, stepped forward. Commander, perhaps we should consider what he is saying. What he is saying is nonsense, Kira snapped. Humans are weak, short-lived. They have no natural weapons, no armor, no fighting instincts. Then how do you explain Kepler 4 for 2b? Min asked quietly. The question hung in the air like smoke. Kira stared at him, her anger warring with her curiosity. She was a warrior, but she was also intelligent. And intelligence demanded answers. You claim our combat techniques are inferior, she said finally. Prove it how? Combat demonstration. According to our laws, even prisoners may invoke the right of Kelter, a chance to prove their worth through combat. Minho raised his bound hands. I'm not exactly in fighting condition. The bonds will be removed. You will be given basic protection. We will fight with training weapons. Kira's eyes were bright with anticipation. Unless you are afraid. Not afraid, Minho said. But I have one condition. You are in no position to make conditions. My friend Jiho, he should be there as witness, in case you decide to have an accident during the demonstration. Kira considered this. Having witnesses was part of the Kelta tradition, and she was curious about the other human as well. Agreed. Minho leaned back in his chair. When tomorrow, after the evening meal, in the main training chamber, Kira moved closer to him. I have never been defeated in single combat. Human, I've fought warriors from 6 different species. All of them are now dead. Impressive, Minho said. How many of them were humans? None. You will be my first. Lucky me. Minho's smile never wavered. Should be educational. For you, yes. You will learn what happens when inferior beings challenge their betters. Maybe, or maybe you'll learn why humans keep winning battles we should lose. Kira stared at him for a long moment. There was something in his eyes she did not understand. Not fear, not even concern. It was almost like he was looking forward to the fight. We shall see, she said finally. As the guards led Minho back to his cell, Yoon approached Kira. Commander, are you certain about this? He seems very confident, for someone about to face a superior opponent. Confidence means nothing without skill, Kira replied. But even as she said it, she wondered why the human seemed so sure of himself. In his cell, Minho lay on his bed and stared at the ceiling. Jiho spoke from the next cell. I heard the guards talking. You challenged Commander Kira to combat. She challenged me. I just accepted. Are you insane? She's twice your size and has been training to fight her entire life. Probably, Minho said. But here's the thing, Jiho, she's been training to fight Vorthons, big, strong, predictable Vorthons, who all fight the same way their ancestors did. He turned to look toward his friend's cell. She's never fought a human, and that makes a difference. Minho's smile was invisible in the darkness, but Jiho could hear it in his voice. Tomorrow, she's going to find out. The training chamber was the largest room on the Void Piercer. High ceiling, smooth floors, and weapons racks along every wall. Bright lights made everything visible. This was where Vorthan warriors came to practice and improve their skills. Tonight, it was full of spectators. Word had spread quickly through the ship. A human prisoner had challenged Commander Kira to combat. Many of the crew had never seen a human fight before. They came to watch what they expected to be a quick and educational beating. Minho stood in the center of the chamber, wearing simple, training clothes. His hands were free now, and he stretched his muscles slowly. Beside him, Jiho sat on a bench, also unbound but watched by 2 guards. Remember, Jiho said quietly, she's fast and strong, but she's also proud. Use that. Minho nodded. He looked around at the crowd of Vorthans watching them. Most looked amused, as if they were about to see an entertaining show. A few looked curious, and one sub-commander Yoon looked worried. Having second thoughts, Kira asked as she entered the chamber. She wore traditional Vorthan combat armor. Black metal plates covered her chest, arms, and legs. In her hands she carried her family's ceremonial velfic. The curved energy blade glowed with blue light. It had been made by her great-great-grandmother and had never known defeat. Not really, Minho replied. Nice sword, though. Family heirloom. 12 generations of warriors have carried this blade, Kira said proudly. Today it will taste human blood for the first time. Training weapons. Remember, Minho pointed to the weapon racks. Unless you're planning to actually kill me. Kira hesitated. The Kelter was supposed to be a demonstration, not an execution, but her pride wanted to use the real blade. Finally, she walked to the weapons rack and selected a training belt. It looked identical to her family blade, but would only stun, not kill. Disappointed, Minho asked. You will not be conscious long enough for it to matter. Kira replied. She moved to the center of the chamber and took a fighting stance. Both hands gripped the weapon's handle. The blade pointed upward and slightly forward. Her feet were spread wide for balance. Her body was turned sideways to present a smaller target. It was the classical Vorthon combat form. Powerful, aggressive, designed to overwhelm enemies with strength and reach. For 1,000 years, it had conquered every opponent. Minho looked at her stance and shook his head. What? Kira demanded. Nothing, just You might want to adjust your grip. My grip is perfect. This is how Vorthan warriors have held blades for centuries. I'm sure it is. Minho walked to the weapons rack and selected a simple training staff. Not a sword, not a blade. Just a plain metal rod about as long as his arm. Ready when you are, the crowd murmured. A staff against a blade, even training weapons. It seemed like suicide. Yoon leaned forward, her green eyes wide with concern. Begin, called one of the guards. Kira moved forward with deadly grace. Her blade swept in a wide arc toward Minho's head. It was a perfect strike, powerful and precise. Minho was not there when it arrived. He had stepped to the side and forward. Inside the arc of her swing, his staff touched her wrist gently, and suddenly her grip was loose. Her perfect strike became a clumsy stumble. Your wrist is exposed, Minho said calmly as he stepped back. When you hold the blade high like that, there's no protection for your joint. Kira snarled and attacked again. This time she thrust forward like a spear. Another perfect technique from the classical forms. Again, Minho was not where the blade expected him to be. He moved slightly, letting the weapon pass beside him. His staff tapped her elbow as she went by. And your elbow, same problem. Too much extension, not enough protection. The crowd was silent now. This was not going as expected. Kira backed away, her yellow eyes blazing with anger and confusion. Stop running and fight. I am fighting, Minho replied. This is how humans fight. We don't try to overpower our enemies. We try to outthink them. Coward's way maybe, but it works. Kira raised her blade in both hands and brought it down in a mighty overhead strike. All her strength and speed went into the attack. It would have split a tree in half. Minho caught her wrists. The blade stopped inches from his head. For a moment, they stood frozen like a statue. Kira's face showed complete shock. She was stronger than him, bigger than him, better armed, but somehow he had stopped her attack with just his bare hands. Here's your real problem, Minho said conversationally, as if they were discussing the weather. You're holding it wrong. What? Your grip. Both hands on the handle, blade held high. It's powerful, but it's predictable, and it leaves you open. He twisted slightly, and suddenly Kira's blade was pointing at the ceiling. See, with a gentle push, he sent her stumbling backward. She caught her balance and stared at him in amazement. That's impossible, she breathed. No, it's just different. Minho held up his staff. You fight like your ancestors fought giant beasts. Big, powerful strikes to bring down large prey. But humans learned to fight each other. Smaller, faster, smarter enemies who fight back. He moved the staff in a complex pattern, showing different techniques. We learned to use leverage instead of strength, speed instead of power. And most importantly, we learned to think 3 moves ahead. Jiho stood up from his bench. May one demonstrate? Commander. Kira looked confused, but she nodded. Jiho walked over and took a training blade from the rack. Captain, if you would assume the Vorthan fighting stance. Minho raised his staff in the classical Vorthan position, both hands high, weapon pointed forward. Now Jiho said to the watching crowd, this is how a Vorthan fights. He attacked with a traditional overhead strike. Minho, fighting like it. Vorthan met the attack head-on. The weapons clashed loudly. Both fighters pushed against each other, strength against strength. Powerful, Jiho said, stepping back, but predictable. Now, Captain, fight like a human. Minho changed his stance, one hand forward, one back. His body turned sideways. His staff held lower and more flexibly. Jiho attacked with the same overhead strike. This time, Minho flowed like water around the attack. His staff struck 3 times before Jiho's blade finished its downward swing. Wrist, elbow, shoulder, speed and precision. Jiho explained to the stunned audience. We don't try to be stronger. We try to be smarter. But that's not honorable combat. One of the Vorthan warriors protested. You're using tricks. War is not honorable, Minho said simply. War is about winning, about surviving, about protecting what matters to you. He looked directly at Kira. Your ancestors developed their fighting style hunting beasts that were bigger and stronger than they were. They needed power to bring down giant prey. He gestured to the crowd around them. But what happens when the prey fights back? What happens when your enemy is not just strong, but also smart? Kira lowered her training blade slowly. Her world had been turned upside down in the space of 5 minutes. Everything she had been taught about combat, about human weakness, about Vorthan superiority, it was all being questioned. You said I was holding it wrong, she said quietly. For fighting humans, yes, your traditional grip works fine against large, slow enemies, but against smaller, faster opponents who know how to exploit weaknesses. Minho shrugged. You might want to consider some adjustments. Show me the word surprised even her. A Vorthan commander, asking a human prisoner for fighting lessons. The crowd murmured in shock. Minho looked at her carefully. Are you sure? Learning new ways means admitting the old ways might not be perfect. Kira was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the training chamber was silent except for the hum of the ship's engines. Finally, she nodded. Show me, she repeated. Minho smiled. Not the mocking smile from before, but something warmer, respectful. First, he said, Let's talk about why humans developed so many different fighting styles. You see, we had this problem. We kept fighting each other. For thousands of years, human fought human, and every time someone developed a new technique, someone else developed a counter for it. He took the training blade from her hands. May I? She nodded. Traditional grip, he said, holding the blade high in both hands. Good for power strikes against large targets. But watch what happens when I change the grip slightly. He shifted his hands, one higher, one lower. The blade moved differently, now more flexible, less predictable. Now I can strike from more angles. I can change direction faster. And my hands are better protected. Kira watched intently as he demonstrated. Around them, the other Vorthians leaned forward to see better. Even the guards were paying attention. But the most important change, Minho continued, is not in how you hold the weapon. It's in how you think about fighting. What do you mean? You fight to win quickly and honorably. Humans fight to survive. We assume our enemy is smart, dangerous, and desperate. We prepare for them to do unexpected things. He handed the blade back to her. Try the new grip. Kira took the weapon awkwardly. Her hands felt wrong in the new position. The blade seemed unbalanced. It feels strange, she admitted. Everything new feels strange at first, Minho said. But strange is not the same as wrong. Commander, you called from the edge of the chamber. Perhaps we should continue this discussion in private. Kira looked around at the crowd of watching warriors. She realized what Yoon was concerned about. A Vorthan commander taking fighting lessons from a human prisoner would be seen as weakness by some. But as she looked at their faces, she saw something else. Curiosity, interest. The same questions that had been bothering her were bothering them too. No, she said finally. Let them watch, let them learn. She looked back at Minho. Continue the lesson, Minho grinned. Yes, Commander. For the next hour, the training chamber became a classroom. Minho and Jiho took turns explaining human fighting techniques to an audience of fascinated Vorthan warriors. The key difference, Jiho explained while demonstrating with the training staff, is that humans developed martial arts to fight other humans. You Vorthans are apex predators. You evolved to hunt large prey that was strong but not particularly clever. He moved through a series of fluid motions, each one flowing into the next. But humans, we're persistence hunters. We're not the strongest or the fastest, but we're stubborn. We keep coming and we learn from every encounter. Commander Kira tried to copy his movements, but her larger frame made the techniques awkward. This feels unnatural, she said, frustrated. Because it is unnatural for you, Minho said. Your people developed combat styles that work with your natural advantages. Size, strength, reach. But what happens when those advantages are neutralized? What do you mean? Minho gestured to the weapon racks around the chamber. All these weapons are designed for Vorthan warriors, long blades for your reach, heavy weapons for your strength. But what if you had to fight in a narrow corridor, or in zero gravity, or with weapons designed for smaller hands? The watching Vorthans murmured among themselves. These were scenarios they had never considered. Humans have to adapt constantly, Jiho added. We fight in every environment imaginable. Desert, jungle, underwater, in space. We use every kind of weapon ever invented. We have to be flexible because we never know what we'll face next. Sub-Commander Yoon stepped forward. But surely there are some universal principles, some techniques that work in any situation. Good question, Minho said. He looked around the chamber thoughtfully. The most important principle is this: never assume your enemy will do what you expect. He pointed to a young Vorthan warrior in the crowd. You, what's your name? Sub-Lieutenant Tay. The warrior replied nervously. Tay, attack me with a standard overhead strike. The young Vorthan looked uncertain but selected a training blade. He raised it in the traditional grip and moved forward. Minho stood perfectly still until the last possible moment. Then he moved slightly to one side and caught Tay's wrist. The blade stopped harmlessly beside his head. Standard counter to a standard attack, Minho explained. Now Tay, try to surprise me. Attack in a way I won't expect. Tay thought for a moment, then grinned. Instead of raising his blade high, he held it low and thrust upward toward Minho's chest. This time, Minho had to work harder to avoid the attack. He twisted away, but not as smoothly as before. Better, Minho said. Unexpected angles are harder to counter. Now what if you attacked with two weapons? Two weapons. Tay looked confused, but that's not proper combat form. Proper according to who? Jiho asked. Humans use two weapons all the time. Two swords, sword and dagger, staff and shield. Whatever works, but it's not honorable. Honor is a luxury, Minho said quietly. When you're fighting for your life, for your family, for your people, honor doesn't stop you from dying. The chamber fell silent. The Vorthians were proud warriors who valued honor above almost everything else. But Minho's words made them think about situations where honor might not be enough. Commander Kira broke the silence. Show us more. For the next several minutes, Minho and Jiho demonstrated techniques that would have been considered cheating by Vorthan standards. Fighting with two weapons, using the environment as a weapon, feinting and misdirection, psychological warfare. Here's something humans learned. Early, Jiho said while showing how to use an opponent's strength against them. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. Size and strength can become weaknesses if you know how to exploit them. He had Tay attack him again, but this time he redirected the young warrior's momentum instead of stopping it. Tay went stumbling, past, off balance and vulnerable. Your own power becomes your enemy, Jiho explained. Humans call this using leverage, but this requires extensive training, Yoon observed. How long does it take to learn these techniques? That depends, Minho said. How long do you want to live? The blunt answer sent a chill through the watching warriors. Humans start learning to fight as children, Jiho added. Not because we want to, but because we have to. Our world is dangerous. Our enemies are everywhere, even other humans. That's what I don't understand, Kira said. Why do humans fight each other so much? It seems wasteful. Minho and Jiho exchanged a look. This was the heart of human nature, and also the source of their strength. Competition, Minho said finally. Humans compete for everything. Food, territory, mates, resources, ideas. We compete constantly, even when we cooperate. But competition makes us stronger, Jiho continued. Every time a human warrior develops a new technique, other humans figure out how to counter it. Every time someone builds a better weapon, someone else builds better armor. It's like evolution in fast forward, Minho explained. Only the best ideas survive. Only the most effective techniques get passed down. Humans have been at war with ourselves for so long that we've become very, very good at it. The Vorthans looked uncomfortable with this idea. Their empire had been built on strength and honor and unity. The idea of constant internal conflict was disturbing to them. But surely this makes humans weak as a species, one of the warriors asked. All this fighting among yourselves. You'd think so, Minho said, but it has the opposite effect. Every human who survives to adulthood has been tested. We know how to handle conflict because we've been handling it our entire lives. And when we face external enemies, Jiho added, we apply everything we've learned fighting each other. All the tricks, all the techniques, all the psychological warfare. Like on Kepler 4 for 2B, Yoon said quietly. The chamber fell silent again. The battle that had started this whole discussion, the impossible victory that had shaken Vorthan confidence throughout the sector. What really happened there? Kira asked. The official reports make no sense. Minho considered whether to answer. These were still his captors, still the enemy, but they were also genuinely trying to understand, and understanding was the first step toward respect. Your garrison commander made a classic mistake, he said finally. He assumed the humans would fight like Vorth, stand and fight, strength against strength, honor against honor against honor. Instead, they fought like humans. They studied your patrol patterns and found the weaknesses. They used the city's architecture against you. They made you fight on their terms, not yours. But they were civilians. One of the warriors protested. Untrained farmers and shopkeepers, untrained in military combat, maybe, Jiho said, but they were still human. They'd spent their entire lives solving problems, adapting to challenges, dealing with conflict. Those skills translate. Plus, Minho added, they had something your soldiers didn't have. What? Desperation. They were fighting for their homes, their families, their freedom. You were fighting for duty and honor. Both are powerful motivators, but one of them is personal. Commander Kira set down her training blade and walked to the chamber's large window. Outside stars moved past as the Void Piercer continued its patrol. She stared into space, processing everything she had learned. Sub-Commander Yoon, she said without turning round. Yes, Commander, I want you to review all our tactical manuals. Look for assumptions we make about how enemies will behave. Look for situations where those assumptions might be wrong. Understood, Commander. Kira turned back to face the room. I also want volunteers for extended combat training. We're going to learn some of these human techniques. Several of the younger warriors stepped forward immediately. Others looked uncertain. Commander, one of the older warriors said, is it wise to abandon our traditional methods? They have served the Empire well for centuries. I'm not suggesting we abandon anything, Kira replied. I'm suggesting we add to what we know. A warrior who only knows one way to fight is vulnerable to an enemy who knows two ways. She looked directly at Minho, assuming our teachers are willing. Minho raised an eyebrow. You want humans to train Vorthan warriors. I want to understand how you think, how you fight, how you win battles you should lose. Kira's yellow eyes were intense. Will you help us? What's in it for us? Better treatment, better quarters, perhaps even eventual freedom, if you prove valuable enough. Minho looked at Jiho, who shrugged. Your choice, Captain. The chamber was quiet as everyone waited for Minho's answer. The moment felt important, like a turning point. All right, Minho said finally, but I have conditions. Name them. First, we train willing volunteers only. No one who doesn't want to learn. Agreed. Second, we share information both ways. You tell us about Vorthan tactics. We'll tell you about human ones. Kira hesitated. Military secrets were sensitive, but the potential gains outweighed the risks. Agreed. Third, if we're going to be teachers instead of prisoners, we get treated like teachers. Better food, better quarters, freedom to move around the ship, within limits. Yes, Minho smiled and extended his hand in the human gesture of agreement. Then we have a deal. Kira looked at the offered hand uncertainly. Handshaking was not a Vorthan custom, but she had asked humans to teach her new ways of thinking. Perhaps it was time to start learning their customs too. She took his hand and shook it awkwardly. Deal, she said. Around them, the assembled warriors began talking excitedly among themselves. This was unprecedented. Humans teaching Vorthan's enemies becoming teachers. But as Sub-Commander Yoon watched the two former enemies shake hands, she had a strange feeling that this was just the beginning of much larger changes to come. 3 days later, the Void Piercer had been transformed. What had once been a normal Vorthan warship was now something unique in the galaxy, a place where two species were learning from each other. The training chamber was busy almost constantly. Young Vorthan warriors practiced human fighting techniques while Minho and Jiho learned Vorthan combat forms. It was awkward at first, but both sides were eager students. Sub-Commander Yoon had thrown herself into the project with enthusiasm. She spent hours reviewing tactical manuals and comparing Vorthan strategies with human approaches. What she found disturbed and excited her in equal measure. "Commander," she said, entering Kira's quarters with a stack of data tablets. "I've completed the analysis you requested." Kira looked up from her own work. She had been studying human military history, trying to understand how such a chaotic species could be so effective in combat. "What did you find?" Yoon activated the room's holographic display. Star maps appeared, showing recent battles throughout the sector. "In the last 6 months, human forces have won 13 major engagements against Vorthan units," she began. "In every case, they were outnumbered and outgunned." "Continue." "I analyzed the tactics used in each battle. The pattern is consistent. Humans avoid direct confrontation. They use mobility, deception, and environmental advantages. Most importantly, they force us to fight on their terms." Kira studied the tactical displays. Red dots showed Vorthan positions. Blue dots showed human forces. In every battle, the blue dots moved in ways that seemed random until you understood the larger pattern here. Yoon pointed to one engagement, the Battle of Titan Station. "We had a full battle group, 12 ships, 300 fighters, 2,000 marines. The humans had 37 ships of various sizes and maybe 600 crew total. I remember that battle. We lost. We lost because we fought the battle they wanted us to fight. They lured our ships into an asteroid field where our superior firepower was limited. They attacked our supply lines while we were focused on their main force. They even convinced some of our own allies to switch sides by promising them better trade agreements." Kira frowned. "That last part sounds like cheating." "By our standards, yes, but it worked. While we were focused on honor and military prowess, they were thinking about economics and politics and psychology." More tactical displays appeared. Each one showed the same pattern. Humans using indirect approaches, turning Vorthan strengths into weaknesses, fighting with their minds as much as their weapons. "The most disturbing part," Yoon continued, "is that they're getting better. Each battle shows more sophisticated tactics than the last. They're learning from every encounter, while we keep using the same approaches that worked against previous enemies." "Exactly." Yoon paused the display and looked directly at her commander. "Kira, I think we've been making a fundamental error about humans." "What kind of error?" "We've been treating them like a primitive species that got lucky with technology. But I think they might be the most sophisticated military force in the galaxy." The words hung in the air like a challenge to everything the Vorthan Empire believed about itself. "That's a serious accusation, Yoon." "I know, but consider this. Humans have been at war continuously for their entire recorded history, not just with other species but with each other. They've had thousands of years to perfect the art of warfare." Kira walked to her window and stared out at the stars. "If that's true, then we've seriously underestimated them." "I think we have. And there's more." Yoon activated another display. "I've been talking with Captain Minho about human military doctrine. The way they think about warfare is completely different from ours." "How so?" "We fight to win battles. Humans fight to win wars. We focus on honor and individual combat prowess. They focus on achieving strategic objectives by any means necessary." Kira turned back to face her subordinate. "Explain." Minho showed me something called the Art of War. It's an ancient human text about military strategy. One of its main principles is the supreme excellence is to subdue the enemy without fighting. That makes no sense. How do you win without fighting? By making the fight unnecessary. By convincing your enemy that fighting is pointless. By offering better alternatives. By making them want to surrender." Yoon's excitement was growing. Humans don't just think about destroying their enemies. They think about converting them, bribing them, confusing them, scaring them, and this works. Look at the evidence. How many Vorthan colonies have switched sides in the last year? How many of our allies have decided that trading with humans is more profitable than fighting them? Kira had to admit the numbers were troubling. The human advance through Vorthan space wasn't just military, it was economic, political, and cultural. "There's something else," Yoon said quietly. "Something Captain Minho told me yesterday that I can't stop thinking about." "What?" I asked him how humans became so good at warfare. His answer was, we had to be. We're not the strongest or the fastest or the most numerous. We're just the most stubborn. Stubborn, he said. Humans have a concept called spite. Fighting not because you expect to win, but because you refuse to lose. Continuing to resist, even when defeat seems certain. UN paused. He said the most dangerous human is one who has nothing left to lose. A chill ran down Kira's spine. She had seen that look in human prisoners before. Not fear, not even anger. Just a cold determination. That said, you can kill me, but you can't make me quit. There's more, Yoon continued. I asked him about human units that faced impossible odds. Do you know what he told me? What he said. Humans have a saying, victory or death. But that's not the scary part. The scary part is that they mean it literally. Human units will fight, to the last soldier, rather than surrender. They'll blow up their own ships rather than let them be captured. Kira remembered reports of such incidents. Vorthan commanders had dismissed them as primitive barbarism. But what if it was actually sophisticated psychological warfare? If you can't capture human equipment or take human prisoners, she said slowly, then defeating them becomes much more expensive. Exactly, every battle against humans costs us more than we gain, even when we win. Meanwhile, every battle costs them less because they expect to lose people and equipment. They've turned warfare into a mathematics problem, and they're very good at math. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Enter, Kira called. Captain Minho walked in, accompanied by 2 guards, but the guards looked relaxed, more like escorts than jailers. The atmosphere on the ship had changed significantly in just 3 days. Subcommander Minho nodded politely. You wanted to see me? Yes, Kira said. We've been discussing human military philosophy. Yoon tells me you have some interesting perspectives on warfare. I try. Minho looked at the tactical displays still floating in the room, reviewing our recent victories. From our perspective, their defeats. Sorry about that. War is messy. Kira studied his face. Are you really sorry? Or are you proud that your species is winning? Minho considered the question seriously. Both. Actually, I'm proud that humans are proving we're not the primitive species you thought we were. But I'm sorry that people on both sides are dying for what seems like a pointless conflict. Pointless. What are we really fighting about? Territory, resources, pride. Minho shrugged. There's enough space in the galaxy for everyone, enough worlds for every species. The only reason we're at war is because someone decided we couldn't coexist. Humans attacked Vorthan colonies, Yoon pointed out. After you attacked human colonies, who attacked first doesn't matter anymore. What matters is whether we can find a way to stop. Kira felt a strange sensation. For the first time in her military career, she was listening to an enemy talk about peace and finding herself interested in what he had to say. You think peace is possible? She asked. I think peace is inevitable, Minho replied. The question is whether we reach it through exhaustion or through wisdom. Explain. Humans and Vorthans both want the same basic things. Safety for our families, prosperity for our people, respect from our neighbors. We're fighting because we think there isn't enough of those things to go around, isn't there? The galaxy is huge, Commander. Bigger than either of our species can fully explore in 1,000 years. There are more worlds out there than we could colonize in 10,000 years. More resources than we could use in 1,000,000 years. Minho gestured to the star map. We're fighting over crumbs when there's a banquet waiting for us if we just stop hitting each other long enough to see it. But how do you build trust between enemies? Yoon asked. The same way you're building it right here, right now, Minho said. By working together, by learning from each other, by proving that cooperation benefits everyone more than conflict does. He pointed to the training schedules visible on one of Kira's displays. Your warriors are getting better every day. They're learning techniques that could save their lives in future battles. At the same time, Jiho and I are learning tactics that make us better fighters. Both sides benefit, Kira said. Both sides benefit. And both sides start to see each other as people instead of monsters. Is that how you see us? As people? Minho smiled. Commander, 3 days ago I thought all Vorthans were arrogant, inflexible warriors who cared more about honor than sense. Now I know that some Vorthans are intelligent, curious people who are willing to learn new things even from their enemies. And what do you think now? I think the galaxy would be a more interesting place if humans and Vorthans were allies instead of enemies. Kira felt something she had never experienced before when talking to a human. Hope, Captain, she said carefully. What would it take to make that happen? Honestly, people like you, leaders on both sides who are willing to admit that maybe, just maybe, there's a better way to do things. An alarm sounded throughout the ship. Kira touched her communication device. Report, Commander. We're receiving a distress call from the merchant vessel Golden Dawn. They're under attack by human pirates in the Arcturus system. Kira looked at Minho. Your people, pirates aren't my people, Minho said firmly. They're criminals who prey on anyone weaker than they are. Will you help us stop them? The question surprised everyone in the room, including Minho. Commander asking a human prisoner for help against other humans. What kind of help? Minho asked. Tactical advice. Your pirates will expect us to respond in the usual Vorthon way. What if we don't? Minho grinned. Commander, I thought you'd never ask. The bridge of the Void Piercer buzzed with activity as the crew prepared for battle. But this was unlike any battle preparation in Vorthan military history. At the tactical station, Captain Lee Minho stood beside Commander Kira, offering advice. To his former captors, standard Vorthan response would be a direct assault, Minho said, studying the sensor readings. Jump in, overwhelm them with firepower, rescue the merchant ship. That's exactly what we would do, Kira agreed. What's wrong with that approach? Nothing, if you want to destroy the pirates. But you'll probably lose the merchant ship in the process. Pirates know they can't outfight a warship, so they'll use the Golden Dawn as a shield. On the main screen they could see the situation clearly. 3 smaller human ships had surrounded the Vorthan merchant vessel. The Golden Dawn was sending out desperate calls for help, but its cargo holds were already being raided. What do you suggest? Sub-Commander Yoon asked from her position at the weapons console. We don't rescue the ship, Minho said. We make the pirates want to leave. I don't understand. Pirates are in business to make profit. If we make staying more expensive than leaving, they'll leave on their own. Jiho, who had been given permission to observe from the bridge, stepped forward. Captain Minho is right. Pirates aren't soldiers fighting for honor or duty. They're criminals looking for easy money. So how do we make it expensive for them? Kira asked. Minho smiled. We cheat. 20 minutes later. The Void Piercer approached the battle site. But instead of the dramatic entrance the pirates expected, the Vorthan ship seemed to stumble out of hyperspace badly damaged. Distress signal from unknown vessel. The communications officer reported, playing his part perfectly. They're claiming engine failure and requesting assistance. On the pirate ships, confused voices could be heard over open channels. This wasn't part of their plan. Vorthan warships were supposed to arrive ready for battle, not limping like wounded animals. Golden Dawn. This is the warship Void Piercer, Kira broadcast. We've suffered engine damage and cannot assist at this time. Recommend you comply with pirate demands until we can effect repairs. The message sent exactly the signal Minho had suggested. The Vorthons were helpless. The pirates could take their time looting the merchant ship without worrying about interference. Brilliant, Yoon whispered. They think we're not a threat. Now comes the fun part, Minho said, while the pirates focused on the Golden Dawn. The Void Piercer's seemingly damaged engines were actually positioning the ship for the perfect attack angle. The distress signals were actually detailed scans of the pirate vessels, identifying their weapons, shields, and weak points. Pirates are getting greedy, Jiho observed, watching the tactical display. They're bringing all 3 ships close to the merchant vessel to speed up the looting. Perfect, Minho said. Now they're exactly where we want them, all ships in optimal positions. The tactical officer reported. Weapons ready, Yoon added. Engine repair complete, the engineering officer announced with barely concealed amusement. Kira looked at Minho. Your plan, your call. Execute, Minho, said Dot. The Void Piercer's transformation was instantaneous. One moment it was a helpless wreck drifting in space. The next moment it was a fully functional warship with all weapons trained on the pirate fleet. Attention pirate vessels, Kira broadcast. You are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. The response was immediate and exactly what Minho had predicted. Panic. This is impossible. One of the pirate captains screamed. Over the com you were disabled. We got better, Kira replied dryly. The pirates faced an impossible choice. They could fight a superior warship and probably die. They could run and escape with their lives but lose their current prize. Or they could surrender and face imprisonment. They'll run, Minho predicted. Pirates always choose survival over profit when forced to choose. He was right. Within minutes, all 3 pirate ships had abandoned the Golden Dawn and jumped to hyperspace. The merchant vessel was safe, its crew unharmed, and its cargo intact. That was unusually effective, Yoon said, reviewing the battle data. Minimal weapons fire, no casualties, complete mission success. And the best part, G added, is that those pirates will spread the word. Other pirate crews will think twice before attacking ships in this sector. Psychological warfare, Kira said with new understanding. You didn't just defeat those pirates, you made them defeat themselves. Now you're thinking like a human, Minho said proudly. Over the next few hours, as the Void Piercer escorted the Golden Dawn to safety, the bridge crew conducted an informal lesson in human tactical philosophy. Minho and Jiho explained concepts like misdirection, psychological pressure, and force multiplication. The goal isn't always to destroy your enemy, Minho explained. Sometimes the goal is to convince your enemy that destroying you would cost more than it's worth. Or, to make your enemy want the same thing you want, Jiho added. If both sides benefit from the same outcome, you don't need to fight at all. Commander Kira found herself thinking about these concepts long after the immediate crisis had passed. When the Golden Dawn was safely delivered to its destination, she called Minho and Jiho to her quarters for a private conversation. I've been thinking about what you said, she began, about cooperation being more profitable than conflict. And Minho asked, I want to propose something unusual, a formal alliance between the Void Piercer and your ship, the Red Phoenix. Both humans looked surprised. What kind of alliance? Jiho asked. A joint patrol unit. Human and Vorthan crews working together to protect merchant shipping in this sector. Both sides benefit. We learn from each other. Merchants get better protection, and pirates think twice before attacking anyone. That's actually a good idea, Minho said slowly. But do you have the authority to make that kind of decision? I have the authority to conduct field experiments in new tactical approaches, Kira replied. Especially if those experiments prove successful. And if your superiors don't approve, then I'll convince them the same way you convinced me. But proving that cooperation works better than conflict. Sub-Commander Yoon entered the room carrying a data tablet. Commander, I've prepared the preliminary reports on our tactical exercises. The efficiency improvements are remarkable. How remarkable? Our response time to the pirate attack was 40% faster than standard protocols. Our resource usage was 60% lower, and our success rate was 100% compared to an estimated 70% using conventional methods. Numbers like that are hard to argue with, Minho observed. That's the idea, Kira said. I'm going to recommend that the Fleet Command authorize similar cooperative units throughout the sector. You realize what you're proposing, Jiho said. You're talking about changing the fundamental nature of human-Vorthan relations. I'm talking about evolution, Kira replied. Both our species are intelligent. Both are adaptable. Both want to survive and prosper. The only question is whether we do it separately or together. Together is more efficient, Yoon added, consulting her data, to species with different strengths covering each other's weaknesses. Together is also more interesting, Minho said with a grin. I've learned more about combat in the last week than I did in the previous year. So, Kira said, do we have an agreement? Provisional agreement, Minho replied. Subject to approval from my crew and your command structure. Fair enough. Kira stood and extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. This time, the handshake was smooth and natural. There's just one thing, Jiho said. What, we're still technically your prisoners. Might want to do something about that before we start this partnership. Kira laughed. It was the first time Minho had heard a Vorthan laugh, and the sound was surprisingly pleasant. Consider yourselves released, she said. Welcome to the crew of the Void Piercer. 3 months later, the joint patrol unit had become legendary throughout the sector. The combination of Vorthan technology and human tactics proved devastatingly effective against pirates, smugglers, and other criminals. More importantly, the success of the partnership had led to similar experiments throughout both fleets. Human and Vorthan ships began working together on a regular basis. Trade between the two species increased dramatically. Several border disputes were resolved through negotiation rather than warfare. On the bridge of the Void Piercer, Commander Kira watched her mixed crew work together with quiet satisfaction. At the tactical station, Sub-Commander Yoon discussed strategy with Captain Minho while Jiho trained young Vorthan officers in human fighting techniques. Commander, the communications officer called. We're receiving a priority message from Fleet Command. Put it through. Admiral Sato's image appeared on the main screen. The elderly Vorthan's expression was unreadable. Commander Kira, I have reviewed your reports on the joint patrol experiment. Yes, Admiral, your unit has achieved a 96% mission success rate over the past quarter. Piracy in your sector has decreased by 87%. Merchant traffic has increased by 43%. The crew has performed admirably. Admiral, indeed. Fleet Command has decided to expand the program. You are hereby promoted to the rank of Commodore and given command of the new Joint Operations Division. Kira felt a surge of pride and excitement. Thank you, Admiral. Don't thank me yet. Your first assignment is to establish similar units throughout the entire border region. You'll be working with Human Fleet Command to coordinate the effort. Understood, Admiral. One more thing, Commodore. The Emperor himself has taken notice of your work. He wishes to meet with you and your human advisors next month. After the transmission ended, the bridge was quiet for a moment. Then Min started laughing. What's so funny? Kira asked. 6 months ago, you captured us as prisoners and criminals. Now we're going to meet the Vorthan Emperor as diplomatic advisors. Life is strange sometimes, Yoon observed. No, Jiho said, looking around at the mixed crew working together in harmony. Life is just full of possibilities we never imagined. Commander Kira now, Commodore Kira walked to her command chair and sat down. Through the view screen she could see stars that no longer represented the boundaries of enemy territory. They were simply destinations waiting to be explored. Helm, she ordered, set course for the Centauri system. Let's go teach some more people that cooperation works better than conflict. Aye, Commodore, the helmsman replied. He was human, she noticed with satisfaction. 3 months ago, that would have been unthinkable. As the Void Piercer jumped to hyperspace, Kira reflected on everything that had changed since that day in the training chamber when a human prisoner had told her she was holding her weapon wrong. He had been right, of course. She had been holding it wrong, but the weapon wasn't the problem. The problem was that she had been thinking about it wrong. Now, she thought differently. About enemies and allies, about strength and weakness, about the difference between winning battles and winning wars. Most importantly, she thought differently about humans. They weren't primitive or inferior or lucky. They were partners, teachers, friends, and together humans and Vorthons were going to change the galaxy.